hello out there. Welcome, welcome. My name is Aaron from Solas. Happy to have you here with us tonight, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I'm coming to you live from Singapore, where it's 11 p.m. And I'm happy to introduce a good colleague of mine, Jonathan, who is going to be walking us through the Solas Event Portal and doing some Kafka discovery. So I'm just going to bring him in here to say hello. Jonathan, can you hear me?
Hey, Aaron.
All right.
Hey,
how's it going? Yeah.
Pretty good.
Hello. Okay. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so we're broadcasting live on YouTube. We're broadcasting live on Twitch. If you have questions, happily throw them up in the chat. There's chat on both, and we'll kind of, I'll try and keep an eye on them. Jonathan is going to be busy presenting, so I'll be in charge of that. So any questions out there, throw them up, or head over to Solas Community and put questions there. We'll be happy to answer them. So, Jonathan, a bit about yourself for the people that don't know. Where are you joining us from, and what's your role here at Solas?
Yeah, so I'm joining you from Salt Lake City, Utah, in the U.S. So it's currently not that early. It's actually 9 o'clock. So yeah, let's hope that you can stay awake here, Aaron. But yeah, so my role at Solas is I've been here actually for about 4 years. I'm a senior architect in the CTO's office. And really, my focus has been on this sort of new product called the Event Portal. You know, kind of a lot of this idea came from being a customer previously and sort of having to deal with the challenges around sort of how do you manage like all of your different topics and schemas and actually kind of advertise them to other people to actually consume them. And so, you know, when I was a customer, I did a lot of work with the Federal Aviation Administration here in the United States, along with NASA and NOAA on a satellite ground system. And so kind of this was like the reoccurring problem. I also worked with the VA, Veterans Affairs, you know, hospital system here, right? So kind of multiple domains, all attempting to sort of have event-driven architectures, but all struggling with the same exact problems over and over again. So I was pretty happy to come to Solas and then sort of kind of continue to, I don't know, I guess you could say sort of banter about this problem to the point where I guess finally we said, hey, let's actually like address this with a product.
That's right. All right, good stuff. So for those that don't know me, my name is Aaron. I've been at Solas for coming up on 10 years now. And I originally joined in Canada, then I did a bit of time in New York, then London, and now I've been in Singapore for about 4 years. Right now working as part of the developer relations team, developer community, and yeah, writing samples, doing videos. Maybe you've seen a video or two of mine on YouTube. And yeah, so we're happy to do one of these live stream events every Wednesday, or most Wednesdays we're doing one. So Jonathan, really happy to have you. Is this your first one with us, with our group?
I think it is. So I'm a little worried that I'm not going to do as good a job as like Jesse did with heart rate monitors with Boomi and stuff like that. But I'll still try to at least keep it interesting. But yeah, this is my first live coding session. So
excellent, excellent. Okay, well, so without further ado, well, we're scheduled for about an hour, plus or minus. But we'll see how things go. Maybe if people have questions, you know, we might spend a bit more time talking. Again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on them and I'll post them to Jonathan. And yeah, we have some swag giveaways for good questions. So make sure to ask them if you have them. So that is about that for me rambling on here. I'm going to add your screen here, JS, and we'll get going.
Perfect. Yeah. So obviously, if you've seen sort of some stuff from Solas before, you might be wondering, like, well, first of all, what is an event portal, and like, why would we have discovery with Kafka, right? I think like we can deal maybe with the elephant in the room and chop it up into some bite-sized pieces. So like I said, kind of before, the whole concept of really the event portal was to deal with the concept that events, you know, are all over an enterprise. And within the enterprise, multiple different event broker types might be being used. So you might be using Solas, but you might still have some IBM MQ from a legacy perspective that you can't get off of. You might be doing some event sourcing use cases with Kafka, but really an event that's emanated by whatever is changing sort of state, that event, even though it flows through multiple brokers, you need to sort of manage that holistically. And that's really what the event portal's purpose is. And so the reason why we decided to start with Kafka in particular and sort of have this concept of discovering and kind of reverse engineering what you have into the event portal really is around that. The tooling for Kafka in this area is a little bit on the weak side, and there's a lot of people, kind of playing and messing around with Kafka right now. So from a market perspective, we thought it would be really good to sort of tap into that community and say, hey, like, why not try to manage your events, schemas, and applications that are event driven like you do your synchronous REST APIs in most cases, right? People use MuleSoft or Apigee or Axway's sort of API management solutions that deal with synchronous services. Why not kind of bring that paradigm over to the event-driven world?
So I mean, like, that's really why we built this whole event portal, because there was a lack of tooling. There was nothing that really was addressing this in the async kind of streaming, messaging space. And for those who haven't seen the event portal, I'm assuming we're have a demo. You're gonna be showing us around how it can be used for design and how it can also be used for other things, developer related as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as much as you guys might just want to hear me talk to a web page, I will get on with the demo in 1 second. So
yeah.
So the idea here is the tab that I'm on in the window that you're probably looking at is a guided walkthrough of the PubSub Plus Event Portal Discovery with Kafka. So this code lab is going to go live early next week. And like we'll actually give this to you so you all can basically do exactly what I just did through a guided code lab. So it's a little bit of a work in progress, but it'll be available early next week. And so what I wanted to sort of draw your attention to was this slide. Well, came out of a slide, but this diagram in particular, because I think this hopefully will allow you to sort of relate to the problems that you have. Like, so maybe you started off.
Yes, sorry, man. Can you zoom in a little bit? So, because I don't have my glasses on.
Yes, I can zoom in, I think, but this is the embarrassing moment where I have to admit that I'm new to Mac. So
command
why does
equals
the middle mouse wheel not work for Zoom?
Command plus. I'll try Command plus there, JS.
Command plus.
Yeah.
Tricky there, Aaron. Okay.
Right. Well done. Thank you.
So the idea here is that, like maybe you work on a project at whatever organization, and like you built up a little Kafka cluster for some like little prototype system, right? So you created some producers of some events, you created some consumers, maybe you did some stream processors, right? Like, took off like gangbusters, management liked whatever the output of that and the insights that you were creating. The next step that we sort of see consistently occur from a Kafka perspective is like, let's take all of these different Confluent connectors and let's connect up the rest of the enterprise to this. So maybe from a legacy application infrastructure, you've got a mainframe with IBM MQ and you want to siphon some events off so you can do stream processing in Kafka, or it came from TIBCO or Oracle WebLogic JMS or whatever, right? So like checkbox on that, but then like, hey, maybe there's some good like AI ML stuff in the cloud services. Like you want to take advantage of cloud native services in general. So like, let's connect some of the data that we're collecting in Kafka and like ship it over to there, right? And then finally, this is sort of a maybe, but a lot of organizations are trying to sort of get closer and closer to the customer by using sort of IoT and IoT sort of always connected devices. And so that brings in yet another sort of breed, if you will, of different event broker types. And so really the point is, again, that Kafka, you might view that as sort of the center of maybe what you're currently working on, but there's all of these periphery sort of event sources and event syncs that might be other message brokers that really you start to sort of have a struggle of what all is actually available. What do I want to advertise to others? How do I lifecycle manage your different events and schemas and applications? And I think that is exactly what our goal with the event portal is. And I think you'll see that.
So Jonathan, that's a great segue into our first question here in the chat, which is this event portal discovery only for Kafka?
Well, it's a great question, actually. So there's, so I'm deeply involved with our product. So, but don't think of me as some like, product wonk here, right? But like there is a roadmap. Of course, all product companies have roadmaps. So we're actually working on Solas discovery right now as we speak. That's going to be our second runtime discovery supported event broker type. Of course, and you'll see this in a second, the catalog and the designer component, like that'll, you can, architect any event-driven architecture with that today, regardless of what your broker is. But if you want to sort of reverse engineer what you have and sort of support a little bit more of a life cycle validation through audit kind of a capability, that's where this discovery component comes in. So Kafka is available. Solas is going to be available by the end of the year, we think. And then really, because then we have two, the idea is that we're actually going to open source this entire discovery agent framework so that then you all in the community, maybe you've got web methods here and we don't have any emerging plans to maybe like super support web methods, but you could build your own plugin to really support discovering what's in web methods. So really the idea is by open sourcing this and providing this framework, it allows you guys all in the community to scan whatever you have. And obviously, there's tons and tons of event broker types. In fact, ironically, I found there was this, maybe you've seen it, all have seen this too on Twitter, that there's this huge diagram of like all of the sort of cloud native kind of services out there. And there's this bubble that has messaging. And like, I'm like, I think they only still captured like half of the messaging options, right? Wow. So the point is there's tons of them out there. And so by doing this, it kind of gives you guys the power to support whatever you need to.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Excellent.
All right. Without, I guess, much further ado, let me also just orient you to sort of the demo scenario. So for the next hour, well, maybe not quite an hour, but for the next amount of time that we're together, think of yourselves as new employees of New York City Modern Taxi Co. So New York City Modern Taxi Co.'s whole mission here is it's really we're getting our a lot of business stolen from us, let's just say, from Uber and Lyft, and we need to be able to compete against that. So we need to provide a better taxi experience in order to stay in business. And I don't know about you guys, but most of my New York taxi experiences have not overly been positive. So we're going to fix that with customer reviews as well.
Old school. We're going to modernize them for sure.
Totally.
Hey, zoom in there again, JS. It's
now that I know how to do that,
yeah, yes, excellent.
And so really kind of the idea here is that like, we've got taxis and they're going to be sending out live sort of events as they're moving around and on different rides. And our passengers have mobile devices just like Uber and Lyft, because, we aren't that unique, but we are going to do it better than them. And so, they get to request rides and all of that kind of stuff. And then we've got some microservices sort of on the back end, like with like drop-off processors and stuff like that. And really kind of the idea overall from a Solas perspective, I think you're going to see this more and more is kind of this New York City taxi thing is going to sort of become the base demo that we do like a lot of code labs and work around. And so this is sort of the event portal discovery piece of that, because there's this one team within our New York City Modern Taxi Co. that is using Kafka, turns out. And so now if we kind of go over into the event portal, I've logged into the event portal already, which is really the Solas Cloud console. All of you can, by the way, like sign up for this and play with it for free. In fact, I encourage you to do so. And so let's say that from a greenfield development perspective, we've already sort of taken our New York Modern Taxi Co. and subdivided this into different sort of organizations, right? We've got a
zoom in a bit more there, JS.
What's that?
Zoom in a bit more there, either with the widget or with, I don't know if the Mac zoom will actually work on this screen. That works, that's better. Beautiful, yeah. Beautiful.
So so basically, and I should discuss this. There's really four key fundamental aspects, I guess, of things that we're keeping track of in the event portal. The first one is application domains. And it's funny, the sign up for the free trial event portal just shows up like, I feel like I'm on QVC now. But anyway, sign up for now. Anyway, so basically, application domains are the way that you decompose your enterprise into sort of bite-sized pieces based off of sort of how do you want to expose your event-driven APIs. So think of, you're a employee, maybe you're working on the ops part of this, where you've got the the different processors, and you're responsible for the interfaces from an IoT perspective as well as the rider mobile application. you don't maybe want to expose every one of your events externally, right? Like maybe you've got event-driven microservices where one microservice is kind of emitting an event and several are consuming it, but you don't want to sort of manage that event across your organizational boundaries, right? It could kind of ruin some of your agility that you've worked so hard to do. And so application domains allows you to sort of group those things and then say, hey, what events do I really want to have shareable outside of my application domain? So that's fundamental element number one.
So hold on, Jay, before you carry on there, let's just rewind 1 second. There was a question on the chat that I just want to make sure we got. Cool Dev Ninja is asking if the taxi data feed is actually going to be accessible to everyone. Do you want to answer that, or should I? I mean, I think
you should take that one.
Well, so yeah, the taxi data feed will be accessible. We are planning to make it publicly available to consume using either Solas or one of our other open APIs, such as MQTT. And yeah, it'll be up and live and streaming. And stay tuned for that. I mean, we'll have details in the code lab. So when this code lab gets launched, we'll provide URLs and usernames and passwords and everything that if you want to build a app, analytics, whatever you want, that is consuming this taxi data feed, you can do just that. So kind of look at this, the taxi data, the GPS data as these taxis drive around New York. So that is the moderately short answer.
Yeah, that's. I think it's going to be a pretty sweet set of code labs and stuff of how do you really interact with real data. So
that's right. And this, because part of it is like this demo is one of our bigger undertakings. Like we've done lots of, in the Solas field community, we've built lots of demos here and there, but this taxi demo is actually going to be a very kind of broad and encompassing demo involving Kafka as well as other kind of integration products and more than just kind of just only Solas, right? So that's, I think, what makes this really quite exciting. You talk, I have to answer my door.
Yeah, no problem. So the other three elements of of the event portal are what we call events, and events are sort of that change in state, of how your data is sort of mutating, and an event relates to a payload schema. That payload schema could be Avro schema, JSON schema, XML schema, text or binary. And then there are applications, and applications are simply things that sort of emit or receive events. And so in this diagram, you can sort of follow the relationships paths here of like, maybe you're the rider, you're gonna, create yourself an account, and then you're gonna call for a ride, and things like that all need to sort of be handled on our back end in an event-driven sort of way. So these sort of, lack of a better term, baseball home plate looking icons, those are the different events that we have within this application domain. And then these are all of our different applications. So let's say that you're kind of looking at this and you're like, I wonder like what does a ride updated event sort of look like? Well, you can sort of go in here and view details, and the types of things that we're keeping track of within here are, what's the topic? And so since
zoom in a bit again then, JS. I hate to keep reminding you. I'm so sorry.
Well,
there we go. Now we can read it. All right, perfect.
Thank you. I would learn that, but I don't. In fact, my wife always says I don't learn new tricks very easily. So, but yeah. So basically, like here's the topic address that we're using. We're using Solas as the topic scheme in this case, of course, because multiple event broker types all have different topic schemes. We, as part of integrating with these different brokers, need to sort of know, like, are you supporting sort of the topic hierarchies that support real-time routing like Solas does, so that you can have like dynamic parameters and be like, hey, I only want to like, look at a certain geographical proximity as part of my subscription? Or is it more like a label where a topic is really just a label in Kafka that's put onto the different events, and there's really kind of not a dynamic nature as part of that? So we keep track of that kind of thing. Like, what is the content type? In this case, it's a JSON message. Like, what's the schema? Like, it's the right updated schema, which kind of looks like that. We're actually going to be building some enhancements here so that if you're like me and don't like super love to just read schema documents, like we're going to kind of create a Java doc version like of that as well, so that you like human readable, I would say, even though schemas are supposed to be human readable.
Is this standard JSON schema, or what exactly are we looking at there?
Yeah, so that's draft 7 JSON schema. So and then like I mentioned before, We support Avro schema as well. Protobuf is on our roadmap. Obviously, there's the catch-all of text and binary, and then you can also, we also, I would say, fairly primitively support XML schema. So keep your expectations a bit in check as it relates to XML schema. Like, obviously, there's plenty of people out there using XML schema, but yeah, like probably not something we're going to super invest heavily in.
Right. Now, before we just keep going, we do have a question from YouTube. So the question is, how is the security ensured at payments and things for such things as CAB services?
Security ensured. So good question. So basically, this is where, at runtime, we would be using like TLS and, TLS from a encryption perspective. We may or may not be using, things like client certificate authentication, maybe integrating with some OAuth kind of providers, right? So very sort of common, application to application sort of security. And then, because obviously in this case, it's Solas doing that lifting. Solas, you can encrypt the storage so that you don't sort of have things like that. Like we have some pretty cool connected car use cases at Solas where, you can, through a mobile app, kind of like this, turn on and off your vehicle. Of course, you'd want that to be secure, else every one of that major car maker's brand would be stolen, which, if you're the thief would be great, but if you're the car owner, not so good.
So, I mean, like Solas, we know we're not a credit card payment gateway, for example. We'd have integrations using, partners or integration tools to kind of, have things that would handle, credit card transactions or debits and credits and stuff like that. The data as it flows over Solas, as you mentioned there, is going to be encrypted. So, as far as we're concerned, the transport will all be very secure. And then you just need to make sure that your partner integration to your credit card company or whatever, that integration is secure as well. So. Yeah.
So then the other the other thing that I think is worth talking about is like, okay, what's an application, right? So again, sort of like metadata about the application. I will zoom in a little bit. But now we're looking at sort of information as it relates to like, okay, this application is subscribing to some things and publishing to some things, like what is it actually kind of doing? And then, a key to this is this concept of async API, which is kind of like open API, but for event driven. So you could download an async API specification that relates
for this application, right?
Right. So you can choose here JSON or YAML, download that bad boy, and then you're kind of now into the async API community of what are the code generators or document generators that you could use to actually get a hold of building in this case this payment processor application.
That's right. And for people that don't really know what async API is, I mean, it's just kind of a well, do you want to give it a quick description, or do you want me to?
Well, one thing I was also going to mention related to that, and following the same sort of theme, is there is a design to code using Event Portal and async API code generation code labs that is sort of already out there. And so this will walk you through from a developer perspective of I actually want to build one of these things and use async API code generation with Spring Cloud Stream as an example. And this will sort of walk you through from the very beginning of how do you actually leverage async API from a developer perspective.
Yeah, and I've done it. It's pretty slick. I've being at Solas for so long. Having to write a lot of messaging applications by hand. It is pretty cool to be able to download a spec and basically build some a code outline, a framework, a skeleton that you can just start.
And it's I think async API has come a long way. I mean, it is, I think, the holy grail for us that have been doing event driven for like decades of, like I can't count the number of times I attempted to wrap a messaging API with an easier API so that developers could actually use this in a consistent way, right? Like, it turns out we should have just been looking at it from how do you just generate their freaking code interface and not have them write all of it in the first place? I wish I had that idea, but I didn't. So.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go back here to the demo. And so, let's walk through a little bit of this component called the catalog. So the catalog is the place where, let's say that you're internal to the New York City Modern Taxi Co. and you're like, hey, like what are all the different events and schemas that are available? You know, what are the applications? You know, maybe you want to be able to do a search on a schema for like, hey, I want to find speed because I want to know like what drivers are speeding. Oh, okay, the ride updated schema actually has an attribute probably of speed. Obviously, we search both the description as well as the actual schema itself. So yeah, here's some.
That's right. So if you're looking for something that's in the topic or the description or any part of the event, the library catalog will be able to find it.
Oh, absolutely. Like a great example of like, you know, within events, like we knew that we were using latitude and longitude, remember, as a dynamic like parameter here. So like you can probably search for like lat as an example. And yeah, it says, hey, the match field here, both this one has it in the description and the topic name. This one's just the topic name, right? So we give you sort of contextual aware like search, right? So then as you're sort of viewing your search results, you're like, oh, well, that one's probably more significant maybe, right? So
that also tells me I need to go fill the description in for ride updated, because that's it should have the word latitude in the description.
That's right. Yeah. So let's actually just take a second. Okay, I don't.
Yeah, that's a pretty dull.
So here they gave like a nice little like kind of like nice view of that, and I'm sure ride updated is well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess they don't have for this one. It just doesn't.
So that was basically handwritten. So as we were designing the schema, what we wanted to include inside the object. So if you open the schema, you'd see everything that we ended up adding to it. But yeah, so we need to go back and update.
We need to fix that.
Yep. Right. I'll take a note.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's good to actually see that. We are humans like you, built using this tool to build up our taxi enterprise here, right? So mistakes.
That's right. And now I don't have to go searching through like Excel spreadsheets or Word documents looking for like the FS or the FD where this is all defined. It's all here in the portal and it's searchable, which is pretty sweet, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also important to sort of mention like why am I hitting on search so hard, right? Well, like unlike maybe some organizations where you've got like a set of REST APIs, and like of course under each REST API you've just got like, you know, you've got maybe a lot of certain like different resources, right? Well, the organizations I've worked in, like, you know, the FAA has like I would say thousands of different event types, right? So you're not going to just go like browsing through your event types, and like you really need to have pretty good search, and you need to be able to relate. In a lot of cases, you know what data you're looking for, you know what that attribute name is, but you have no idea like what event's transporting it. So that sort of that linkage of like, oh, okay, like ride updated, oh, it's actually referenced by events, then kind of go through these linkages allows you as the end user to go, oh yeah, man, I actually want to consume that event. So, and then also seeing who publishes it. In a lot of cases, you might have the same schema being published by multiple sort of different, you know, source systems, right? But maybe there's only like one system that's really the authoritative source of a given data attribute. Like that's the one I want to consume, not like some other guy who's just republishing it who I don't really trust as much, right? So these are sort of the large enterprise problems that we've really built this tool to help address.
That's right. And for those of you out there listening and you want to give this a try, you know, the event portal is free to try. You just come and sign up. I'll throw up a QR code here. So while Jonathan's talking, if you just want to take a scan of this QR code, you can try the event portal for free. So all right, back to the show.
So basically now we're going to switch into the Kafka mode, right? So again, the premise is, you know, we've designed some stuff like we're the, you know, lack of a better term, we're the cool Solas kids using the event portal for like our part of the enterprise. But there's this other part that's using Kafka that sort of followed that story where they got started, they started integrating other things, and now they kind of don't know what they have anymore. But then also like we want to know what they have because maybe there's things that we want to reuse. So the idea here is that you could download the discovery agent install file. And so really what it is it's an offline agent that allows you to sort of like deploy this in a couple of different ways, but basically you just need to deploy it where it has connectivity to the Kafka cluster. You can either deploy it with Docker or you can deploy it as sort of a runnable jar file kind of a thing. And once you have that installed, then you navigate to sort of whatever its host is, port 8120, which I have up here. And then you can kind of, you know, give it a discovery name, like, you know, in this case, I've already chosen Confluent, but we support the open source Apache. We support Amazon MSK as well. So you can kind of pick which Kafka distribution you've actually are using. Then provide a discovery name, sort of the host and authentication type stuff. We, of course, for this case, aren't using any security because let's make this demo easy.
Where are you running it, by the way? Is it? It's in Azure. Okay. Yep.
It's in well, I say Azure, but maybe that's just me. Azure, and so basically, like we're going to connect up to the cluster itself and kind of interrogate that from a reverse engineering perspective. We've got some connectors, so let's connect up to the connector URL as well and pull what connectors are getting used. And then we're also using the schema registry, so let's connect up to that and basically scan for all the topics.
So we're really looking at all aspects of the kind of the Kafka Confluent architecture, or
all would be a big statement.
Okay,
Which I suddenly now feel like I'm in the hot seat in front of the Senate or something. But basically the idea, why didn't I just close that? Okay, let me rerun that.
Right.
So what we're really interrogating for is, what are the topics that are being produced? What are the schemas that are being used? What's in schema registry? How does it relate to the different Kafka topics? What are the consumer groups? Because that gives us an idea of what applications are subscribing to. And then what are the connectors? And then sort of a primitive initial scan here of like, what's the connector configuration as to, what is it consuming or what is it producing from a Kafka perspective?
The source and sinks and everything, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so from here, you can then either upload this to Solas Cloud, in which case, what's your Solas Cloud username and password, or download the results. I'm going to click download, load the results, and it basically is just a JSON file. So from there, we can then go to the event portal, and then we can add a discovery file. In this case, I'm actually going to I have a bunch of these different ones already done, but I'm going to use one of my trusty ones that I really like, which is this one. The reason for that, by the way, is myself and Aaron and some of the other people in the CTO team are still working to perfect that the scan coming back looks like this one, but that'll be done by next week. Currently, it's missing a couple of connectors that we're working to get installed. So
we're close. Yeah.
So here's basically like a scan. Let's pretend that was the scan that I just did. And so you're kind of faced here with two decisions. We're going to probably make this a little bit cleaner, but you can either stage it for import, which in that case, you're just looking at kind of the scan file, and you don't want to see if you can draw any correlations to things that you already had done within Designer, or you can assign it to what we call a workspace, and a workspace can have one-to-many application domains assigned to it, which allows us, again, to sort of go, hey, do I see any common things? Like, are these things kind of linked within the enterprise or not? So we're going to actually say, yeah, let's take this data that we kind of already walked through a little bit, and let's see what inferences we can sort of make through this synchronization audit.
Cool. By the way, while that's going, we have a comment in the chat here from Cool Dev Ninja again, who thinks the search, the catalog function is pretty neat. Definitely a struggle I went through with my team, is trying to keep track of all the various topics and payload schemas and everything, I guess, in an event-driven architecture. So yeah, thanks for the comment there, Cool Dev Ninja. I've, my first couple of years at Solas, I was professional services. I worked on site with a bunch of customers, and having something with the ability to kind of listen to all the data that's going through a Solas broker and build some of these topic hierarchies and schemas and everything like that would have been very, very cool. Nothing, and then be able to search for this stuff, like across all of my different apps, all my Solas apps or whatever, being able to look for data regarding bonds or data regarding, lat long, like Jonathan just showed us, or whatever. Having that data would have been really, really neat. So thanks for the comment, and I agree. I think this is a pretty cool feature there. So yeah,
and I think just to also give one little piece of color too, right? So like on my different projects, so the satellite ground system, we tried to use Excel spreadsheets kind of for this, which was a complete dumpster fire. We built a custom catalog from the FAA's perspective, and that worked reasonably. But the big challenge has always been, how do you keep the information in your catalog also synchronized, right? So it's great that you can manually enter stuff. Like I could manually enter stuff in a SharePoint site, right? Doesn't mean my SharePoint site knows that how the heck to interrogate an event broker to determine like what's the reality, right? And so that's really also something to really think about as we're going through this discovery scan is this allows you to now have linkages and confidence that what you actually are searching on in the catalog actually is real. I know I'm not going to name what of those 3 organizations I was working for when this happened to sort of save the innocent here, right? But like I know of a specific case where somebody sort of created an application to consume an event type that had actually been deprecated a year prior, and they spent all that time building an application, and then they're like, "Where's my data?" Right? Like that's sort of what we want to avoid. There's plenty of other cases also. That is, just because you know what the event is, do you know who the downstream subscribers are? And do you know the downstream subscribers that are going across integration bridges that might exist on a different event broker? So if you don't know, if you change the publisher, maybe in a, to produce data in a non-backwards compatible way, like how do you not break stuff, right? Like that, I'm sure Aaron probably has seen as well in enterprises where you think you've contacted everybody and everyone's updated and you hit the big button and you're like, that didn't work, roll back, right?
That's right. Yeah, having that kind of lineage capability is pretty useful. The PubSub architecture by nature is decoupled, right? So you don't know exactly who's getting that data, and with bridges and event mesh and whatever, that data could be flowing anywhere throughout your enterprise. So having additional tooling to help track and monitor that and help find that stuff, in addition to designing a well-formed topic hierarchy and versioning, which is another topic for another day. But anyway, that's good. All right, that was a lot of chat about this. Let's get back to your Kafka discovery. I'm excited to see what you got there.
Yeah, carrying on, I could talk about that for hours. But yeah, so essentially what you see here is like, okay, this is sort of what we've discovered, right? So essentially we found some different 3 different consumer groups. We found 4 connectors, 3 of which are sync connectors. 1 is a source connector. So in this case, again, we're using Solas on the other part of the enterprise. So it looks like we probably have some connectivity between the app domains, both from a source and sync perspective. We've got Google Cloud Storage and Elasticsearch integrations as well. And then, we can say, okay, like what are the new topics that we found? So these are the different Kafka topics.
Kafka topics, right? Yeah.
Here are the different schemas that we were able to discover. It looks like they're using a lot of Avro over there, which is pretty typical, I'd say, over in Kafka world, right? And so note that like there's this sort of yellow banner-y thing saying like, hey, like you need to assign these things to an app domain, right? So this again sort of helps you assign and organize your stuff so that you can start to work on it. One of the reasons that's like super important, by the way, is like we've done Kafka scans of some different organizations, pretty large organizations, where you scan a Kafka cluster and they've got like 6,000 topics, a couple hundred consumer groups. Like you've got to sort of be able to slice and dice this into manageable bite-sized pieces, because I don't know, either that or I'm just like pretty stupid and can't deal with 6,000 things in my head. But
I would not want to scroll through 6,000 elements in that.
No, I think that would be bad. So like as an example, what you would want to do there is you'd want to be like, okay, like let's say that we're in topics, there's 6,000 things, like kind of look at your display, like what was the topic? Like a lot of organizations sort of embed organizational sort of constructs in their topic names, and then like do the filter. Like let's say that there is something specific in this data, you could do a filter like underscore UCP, like let's say underscore was their delimiter, like boom, then just do a select all, apply to a consumer group, right? So which is kind of what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to take everything that's new in this case, set an application domain, create a new one called New York City Modern Taxi Co.
Now we're talking a lot about topics here, like Kafka topics, Solas topics, different delimiters, period. Some people out there might think, not know exactly what the difference is between a Solas topic and a Kafka topic. I guess I'm doing a personal plug here for myself, but I have a video on YouTube. It's on this channel. If you're watching on YouTube, check it out. It's all about Solas versus Kafka topics. It kind of breaks it down in about 10 minutes, how the 2 brokers are architected very, very differently. So even though we're both PubSub, even though we both use topics to exchange data between applications, very, very different implementations. And so this my little video talks about the differences there in Kafka versus Solas topic world. So Yeah, I guess.
It's a beautiful plug, Aaron.
Thanks.
I have actually watched that one, and it is quite good. So
thank you. Oh, that's very
yeah,
nice of you.
I think everyone should check that out. It's pretty interesting. So what I did was something a lot less interesting than what Aaron was just talking about, which is I just basically assigned all the new stuff that we found as part of our scan to this new analytics app domain that we just created. And then we can now select that tab and sort of visually see the graph represented of like what all has been assigned. So the reason why we did that way and that we don't initially attempt to draw what we discovered sort of on here is, turns out when you have 6,000 things that you haven't sort of done, like your graph goes and like zooms out to like 500,000 feet of elevation, and it just looks like a complete blob cluster of lines. Turns out not all that useful for very large Kafka deployments. So that's why sort of you use the table to make your app domain assignments, and then you can kind of click up here, be like, all right, what do we actually see? So
this capability is like, this is cutting edge, like, you know, the bleeding edge stuff that we've developed, right? I mean, we're going to be improving the layout, kind of automatic layouts, forced layouts, where everything kind of probably sets itself up a little bit nicer than just.
Oh yeah, we're on a journey, but I think we had a very interesting discussion with a really large retail bank yesterday. Actually, Jamil was on that with me, and so like they too were sort of giving us their wish list of all the different like awesome capabilities, and we're like, yes, like we have the same vision, right? Ultimately, like all of you developing applications, like you can only go one step at a time, right? Yeah. So the other key to that is there is kind of nothing else that does this on the market today. So like my view is like get on board, like start playing with it, start trying it out, give us the feedback of how you want things prioritized, and like we'll try to continue to build this as quickly as possible. So
yep, when it's early days, you can help us shape the journey and shape the tool as you know, customers need.
Absolutely. So what you're seeing now here is this icon that I just selected on, that's a connector icon, right? So you can see there's 4 of those, kind of like what we just saw. Now what you're able to see in this graph are like kind of the relationships that exist, right? Of how did we infer this? Again, I haven't provided any domain expertise yet. This is sort of what we've reverse engineered from what we scanned. These icons here are your different consumer groups, which is a pretty good hint that maybe it's, you know, a consumer group can belong to one to many applications, right? And so, but in our case, there's a one-to-one mapping. And then, you know, these are the different events that or topics, I guess, using Kafka terminology that we've discovered, which of course we really make into events. So now what we do is we really pull out our domain expertise. Aaron is going to pretend for a moment. He doesn't know that he's about to pretend for a moment, but he's going to pretend for a moment to be like the guy from the analytics team using Kafka. And of course, I, as the overall enterprise architect, I'm going to be like, so Aaron, like the fraud detection group, passenger surge, like those are all like different apps, I guess. And Aaron's going to say, yes,
of course, yes.
So, you know, we can convert them to application, and, you know, you can like rename these things to be like a lot nicer name, like fraud detection, because that's like what you probably name your application, right? You could also come up here and say, hey, I want to create an application like passenger surge detection.
Right. If we have like a bunch of people in a certain location, or basically something kicks off some alert in our Kafka analytics.
Yep. And we'll just convert that guy and not even change the name. My point is that, again, you all are your domain expertise guys, right? Like I can't reverse engineer much further than I've been able to. The other thing that's really hard for any publish and subscribe system to sort of interrogate is the like, well, what application is actually publishing that data? Now, sometimes you can infer that from access control lists, but in a lot of cases, your access control lists aren't fine grained enough for me to like know that. And so ultimately, like a question I'd ask Aaron is like, so that like fraud alerted event that's hanging out there, like, do you know what application produces that?
If I was the analytics guy, which I am, I would definitely know, and I would say it's probably that fraud, whichever one you were going to point at.
Absolutely, right? So we're going to make that association, be like, hey, this event is published by the fraud detection app.
So the tool does as much as it can automatically, and then you have to kind of fill in the blanks with your expertise for the rest of it.
Right, and after interrogating Aaron a little bit more, interrogating is a strong word, but yes, after asking him, KPI exceeded is published by passenger surge detection and is published by the driver incentive calc, right? So we've kind of now helped to deal with some of the linkages that we weren't able to reverse engineer, but you as a domain expert know. And again, what our goal here is ultimately to commit this to the event portal so that you're now managing and governing this, within the advertising within the catalog, it's in the designer, so you know what the dependencies all are. And in fact, the next thing I'm going to sort of key in on, and I know I only have 14 minutes left, but I'm going to key in on a very important concept, right? Because right now, if you were to look at this screen, you might be like, well, yeah, like this is my Kafka environment. I've got source connectors and sync connectors, but like, in so many cases, these source connectors and sync connectors are really what I would call, they're integration adapters, right? It's adapting events coming from Solas and republishing them in Kafka, or it's taking events that are in Kafka and putting them into Elasticsearch, right? Like these are really integration components. And these integration components, therefore, have dependencies on what is on the other side of that, right? And so from the Solas perspective, well, there's probably events like passenger upserted and payment charge that you probably recognize are already defined, right? In fact, they're defined over here in that upstream domain where we kind of started. So what you can do here is like passenger upserted, you can drag that up to the analytics and be like, hey, passenger upserted is actually consumed by a connector, which is the Solas source connector. All right, so you can make all of your sort of cross-app domain associations, because again, you don't want to manage things in a very sort of bespoke way per event broker. You want to manage them holistically across these boundaries because that's life, right?
Yeah, it can't be broker centric. It has to be more kind of application domain centric. So
exactly, which again kind of goes back to the why we want to open source the agent so that you can scan anything, pull it into this staging area, make these different associations, and then manage all of your events across those boundaries, right? So now if we go into the analytics view, one of the things we are still working on is persisting these views. So if you like in staging, draw this really pretty, like it doesn't keep calling redraw. That already works that way in the designer where you can like draw things and orient things kind of like you're doing a Visio or a PowerPoint diagram and it like stays.
Yeah.
So it's a little of a work in progress. But here you can now see, though, for instance, the Solas source connector officially has a dependency on that ops app domain, right? Because we made those associations.
Yeah.
The other one that we'd want to do is the KPI threshold exceeded that goes into the what we love to call the executive dashboards, because all executives want dashboards. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced this. Like we want to associate that to being published by a connector, which was that Solas sync connector. Okay.
It's published by a connector. Which is
so if we go back to this app domain, the Solas sync connector is consuming this KPI exceeded event, and it's basically just republishing that into Solas.
Back into Solas. Right, which can then flow into JavaScript dashboards, or it can flow wherever it goes in the Solas world.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I'm going to now, without further ado, hit the commit to event portal. So we're going to commit 21 items and commit this sucker, right? And so what committing really does is it's now like you're mentally sort of moving on a little bit from this discovery view back into designer, right? So what do we have in designer? Oh, look, that new app domain called analytics, highly zoomed in, shows up, and it's got the dependencies of, remember there were 5 events that were flowing from ops into here, and then there's basically the associations of 2 that are going to the back office. So all of that's nicely chronicled. Again, sort of this is where you would actually want to spend some time, I would say, of like, hey, let me redraw the source connector on the left here. Like here are the different Solas events that are actually being pulled in, right? We can pull that app domain over here to the left. Like you can like make everything really pretty, which I do really like to do, but I know I'm running short on time, so I'm gonna like go.
While you're drawing everything and making it look pretty, I'll just throw in another bit of self-promotion. If you don't know about the Solas Kafka connectors, we have them on GitHub. You can go and download them and try them for free. Basically, install them into your Confluent or Apache Kafka distro. I don't really know much about Kafka, but I went ahead and followed there's a code lab that walks you through it. There's READMEs in the GitHub. Point yourself to github.com/Solas products. I don't have a banner to show that, but it's just Google for the Solas Kafka connectors, and you can integrate Solas and Kafka yourself. You actually want to do some runtime, real-time message passing between the two brokers. So, wow, that looks really much better. That was quick. Well done.
Yeah, so as a human, I know how I want my pictures to look, which is generally kind of flowing left to right or whatever, or you can sort of have swim lanes, right? So what I kind of did here is I have a swim lane of here are the different app domains. Here are the different sort of Solas events that are like, or, whatever event types, let's say that we were using ActiveMQ over here, right? Like, doesn't matter. Here are those different events, how they're being attracted to the connectors, how the connectors are interacting over here with the Kafka topics, which are events. Here are our custom applications, and then here are our connector integrations is what I would say, right? So you sort of now have, I think, an understandable architecture diagram, right? Or a relationship diagram. So I want to draw your attention here in the next couple minutes to this one event that doesn't look like the others, right? So he's like he's the hanging Chad of the Florida election back in the day. So fraud detection is producing that, right? But like no one's consuming it. And so one of the things that we found when we've been doing these scans is, and I guarantee you we're going to find the same thing with Solas, is there's lots of events that like the developer was like, oh, that's totally an awesome event. Like, you should totally produce that. And like either one application or no applications are actually consuming that data, which you could look at that as a negative of like, well, maybe we should turn that off. I look at it as it's an opportunity, right? Like, for that data must have some value. The question is how do you harness that value for like a new business use case to actually like have a new insight or a new customer experience or whatever, right? So let's say though, obviously you could right here in this palette be like, hey, I want to create an application. I can have that consumed, generate an async API spec, code it up, connect it to Kafka, rescan, and of course, it would actually say everything's in sync, right? That assumes that developers all follow the right process. And I know as a developer, when I was a developer, I never follow the process. I go like, shit, I can probably just like gin up a really quick Kafka application that consumes this guy. And like, maybe you forgot to update this, right? So kind of code first versus design first. So let's say that happened. What would happen if we added another discovery file, maybe from the next day after the developer did this, and see what would we actually see within our tooling? So we would sort of upload a new scan. We'd assign this to that workspace, which now includes the analytics app domain, and we'd run a synchronization audit. And so what we would actually
is this like an update then? Is this an update or?
Yeah. So let's see what it is. So okay. Let's just say that Aaron was like, because again he's the analytics guy, right? Like he's like, well, let me just like set up periodic scans of my environment because like I just want to know if something doesn't match, right? So in this case, what we actually see is there's a new consumer group that was created. Like we don't have that in our baseline. All this other stuff we do, right? So eyes kind of go to this tab, and it's like, oh, it's this guy, right? Like, that's interesting. Like, given it's got the group name of analytics, like he probably belongs in my app domain. So like, let's set that up and say, yep, that's like owned by us. And then go into the analytics view and be like, well, what is this? Okay, so that event now is being consumed by this like new consumer group. Like that's pretty sweet. Like
right, magic.
Convert this to an application and add it to the, kind of add it to the baseline. Oh no. So how am I zoomed in this far now?
You've zoomed in multiple ways. Command minus.
This is another Mac problem of me and my Magic Mouse sliding on the Magic Mouse top and somehow zooming in, and it drives me insane. Because Command minus.
Command minus.
Yeah, it's like a different layer of zoom.
Yeah. I'm gonna come back. Well, now we'll see how things are, if they remain the way they were when you were just there.
That's a great point, but I have confidence in our product here. So we've already assigned it. So it's blue, not yellow. And then if we go into analytics, scroll down here. There it is. So that event's now being consumed, remember, by a consumer group. I'd right-clicked and said, convert that to an application. And now if we commit it to the event portal, our designer in our catalog is now up to date again with what Kafka actually has. So this is sort of the, how do you make sure that your catalog and designer actually reflects reality? And again, as we build more broker support in and open source that, you'll be able to do this for your entire event-driven estate within your organization.
So is that fraud detection is now going to be in the analytics domain? Is that essentially?
So let's go in there, and then you see him hanging off up here. So I
straight up
like to orient him over there for my design, and then note that I even had closed this window, came back, and my picture is all the way that it was. Right? I wasn't lying to you. I'm not.
I'm happy they fixed that, because it wasn't like that for a little while.
Yes. So yeah, and I mean, ultimately, you know, really our vision for this going forward is like, you'll be able to also sort of like, as things change, maybe you want automatic upload of the scan files. You want us to sort of have the rules of what workspace it automatically is assigned to. And so, you know, you'll be able to sort of be notified, hey, just tell me when there's discrepancies, right? Like most of the time, hopefully you're following the right principles of sort of what my view, I'm being opinionated here, of design first, so that you don't end up with like a complete mess. But discovery is used to sort of get you out of a mess into a good state, and then continuously make sure that you're synchronized.
Yeah, I mean, like throughout the years at Solas, you know, I've helped customers build all sorts of kind of configuration management things, right? So like you scan the configured state of your Solas broker, you know, in terms of queues and usernames and ACLs, and you can diff that day by day to make sure that everything applies to a particular change request and all that kind of stuff. But this is like the next level now, right? Now we're looking at, you know, applications to applications and who's producing what, and, you know, is it following the right schema? And you can flag up differences, you can flag up discrepancies through these scans, right? So
and maybe and like two other things just to sort of call out. One is that within any of these, right, like you could tag, you know, you can add tags and stuff of like whatever you want, right? So you could tag things by use case or by environment or whatever. So we're pretty flexible in that regard. One of the things I wanted to you know, I know we're 2 minutes away from a time perspective, is I want to call out that everything that you just watched me do sort of manually, you can do through our REST API, which is fully documented at openapi.solas.cloud, which means you can integrate this with anything that you want, right? You can integrate it with CI/CD pipelines, with other schema registries, like knock yourselves out. The other thing to call out is one of the things that we're also excited to do is provide an external portal aspect to this. And so myself and Aaron and Mark DePasquale and some others are really kind of prototyping, like, what would an external portal view of this? Like, imagine you walk up and find New York, you know, modern New York taxi code, and you want to integrate with that. Like maybe a screen that looks similar to this, where it's like, you know, what are all your servers, and, you know, what are all of the things that you want to publicly sort of advertise, is all nicely human readable, and then you know, basically download the async API spec of this, run it through code generation, and like boom, now you've integrated across those boundaries, just like you would have done with Open API, but now in a real-time event-driven sort of way. So watch for that to come out as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so while we're just wrapping up here, I guess I would say if you want to stay tuned of all these kind of announcements and things that we're releasing, you know, obviously the Solas website's a great spot, but the Solas community is where a lot of us hang out, and we have announcements there. It's a forum where you can Q&A about all things Solas, about the event portal, about event-driven design and architecture, and the link's down at the bottom there, solas.community. Head over there to try it, to sign up and Q&A to your heart's desire, to content.
Are there any other questions, Aaron?
No, but I do want to call out one member who's asked quite a few questions, and we're happy that they did that. Valabdas Venkatash. Sorry if I messed up your name. Thank you for the questions. If you come over to Solas community, sign up, ping me a note. We'll be happy to send you some swag. Asking questions, get some Solas swag. We're happy to do that. And we're happy to have people participating on our live stream this Wednesday.
Yeah, totally. And certainly, you know, feel free to, you know, through the community, I'd love to speak with any of you if you want more details or sort of understand how it would apply to your organization. Like, you know, obviously, those are the kind of conversations I deal with on a daily basis and really enjoy. So don't be a stranger.
That's right. Or you have your Twitter handle there. You just tweet to Jonathan, and he'll get it in like real time. You know, he's
That's right.
his phone all the time. So is that it? Are we done the demo? I mean, that's pretty much right on time. That's pretty amazing there.
I do what I can. Occasionally I get lucky.
All right. Hey, still listening. All right. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the questions. That was great. Also, thanks to Cool Dev Ninja out there, whoever you are. Happy to ask her any questions, and we'll give you some swag too if you come find us on the Solas community. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. At least it's not in the middle of the night for you. It is now Thursday for me. It's officially Thursday. So hello from the dark side of the planet. Next events coming up next week. I actually don't remember off the top of my head, but head over to Solas community or solas.com/events for all of our live streams. We do them usually every Wednesday, maybe every other Wednesday. I think we're doing one with Spring next week, if I'm not mistaken. Mark, I'm sure can fill me in if that's not right. But thanks very much, Jonathan. Thank you all for joining us. Any last words there, JS, before we hang up?
No, other than thank you and sign up and start managing your events like your APIs. So
no, we have one question. We have one question just before we go from Brajesh. A quick question: do you have a trial version where we can actually practice? Yep. So head over to what's the link here? Let me throw up the QR code here. Just scan this link, and you will sign up for Solas Event Portal. And there's the bit.ly. So well done. That's how you do it. Yeah. I think it's solas.cloud, and that signs you up for the event portal. You can try it. You can design some apps with just point and click and give it a try. So yeah, thanks for the question. Glad you asked that just before the end of the thing. So.
You'd almost think that question was a plant, but it wasn't. So
it wasn't. I know. Woohoo! All right, excellent. All right, everybody. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, Jonathan. It's been swell. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks, everybody. Talk to you later. All right.
Aaron. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Bye.